Today I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about recording your videos in OBS Studio in less than 9 minutes. I'm not going to cover the streaming settings because that's an entirely different kettle of fish altogether, so I'm just going to be showing you the settings you need to start recording some high quality videos, whether it be gameplay or reaction content. So without further ado, let's get started. First, you need to actually download OBS Studio. You can find it on obsproject.com. Simply follow some instructions, download it, bing bang boom, you open up OBS Studio, this is the first thing that you find. Now you may be thinking to yourself, Andrew, what the heck am I looking at? This doesn't make any sense to me. I'll explain. The first thing you need to understand is the canvas. The canvas shows you what you are recording and what the recording will look like once it's exported. Before we look at anything else, we need to create a new profile and a new scene collection. I'll explain what these are in just a second, but just trust me on this. Let's create a new profile and scene collection. Be sure to take note of all the other options you have while creating a new profile and sequence, but don't mind that 38x40 thing. We'll talk about that in another video. Okay, now that we have that taken care of, let's talk about scenes. Scenes are basically folders that carry the different sources or recording tools that you use for whatever you are recording. If that doesn't make sense, let me explain through a demonstration. Let's say that you wanted to record just your face cam. If we created a brand new profile and scene collection, we would automatically have a new scene, but you could create a new scene by pressing the plus button, and you can get rid of it by pressing the trash bin. But since we have a scene selected, we go over to the source window and press the plus button. That's a lot of options. Just simply go up to video capture device, click it, rename it if you desire, and then you have the option to select which camera you will be using. Since I don't necessarily have a camera per se, I'm using my phone with VDOninja, I'll simply be using my webcam, but if you have a camera connected to your computer, it should be listed on that. I usually leave everything else at their default settings. Once that's all taken care of, click OK. And now that we have a new camera, it'll pop up on the canvas. We can adjust the size by clicking and dragging these red borders here. Hooray! Now we have our face. Say hello, Andrew. Oh, that's a problem. So if you couldn't already tell, we're actually just recording our face cam. There's no audio. You could also tell this by looking at the audio mixer in the direct center, which doesn't have anything in it. If we had any audio to record, it'd show up right there, but we don't. So what we do is we go over to sources, click the plus button, and type in audio input, because we are putting sound into the computer, for lack of a better term. Once again, we have the option to rename it and the option to select which microphone we will be using. You can use whatever you want. All right, try it now.
Hello? Hello?
That's a little bit loud. We can adjust the audio by using this slider here, and that should be a little bit better from here on out. As a general rule of thumb, just try to keep the audio from hitting the red, like I just did.
Hello?
If you wanted, you could also right-click on any one of the sources and you can rename or remove it entirely, or adjust the properties if you wanted to find something else to work with. Okay, now let's say that you also wanted to record your display, or what is going on your computer screen. Now, some of you might be thinking that you need to create a brand new profile and scene collection, but no, don't do that. Think of profiles as different accounts that you use for different purposes. Like right now, you're using it to capture your face or your display. If you wanted to live stream, I would recommend creating a new profile for that. If you're recording in a 3840 by 1080 aspect ratio, which I have another video explaining how and why you should do that, and I would recommend you do that if you're into YouTube videos. But if you're doing something like that, keep that in a separate profile. Scene collections go hand in hand with the profiles, and they're basically containers for the scenes, which are containers for the sources. So it's basically the 3-ring binder that carries the folder that carries the sources. Putting it in less convoluted terms, it's another container. So instead of creating a new profile, if you wanted to capture your display alongside your face cam, what I would do is create a brand new scene like we did earlier. So we click the plus button in the scenes right here, and then bada bing, it's brand new blank slate in the sources window. We click plus and then go over to display capture. We have the option to rename it if we wanted, and you can decide which monitor you want to record if you have multiple monitors like I do, and then just leave everything else as is and click OK, and we have a display. If you also wanted to capture the display audio, you just click the plus button and go audio output capture. Then you can make any necessary adjustments that you wish, like the audio or the display size, and that could be it. But let's say that you actually wanted to go a step further and record your face cam while showing something on your display, like you want to give your hilarious reaction to something stupid in a video game while you're playing it. To do that is really simple. You could just click on this and go through the same process all over again, adding the video capture device, or you could add an existing device from the other scenes that you may or may not have. So we can just click the plus sign, and instead of doing what we did before, we could click on add existing, and right there is the source from the other particular scene. If you can't find it, it's probably listed under the display capture, and you can rearrange the order which everything comes in to your liking. So put the video on top of the display and boom, it's right there. Now we can adjust the size or the placement of it. If you wanted, you could also right click on the video capture device, hover over transform, click on edit transform, and then it'll give you a variety of different options. One of these is crop. And if you crop it like 40 by 40 or 100 by 100, it'll give you more of a boxy shape, and you can do that to your liking. And if you make any mistakes, Control Z should be able to take care of the trick. Now, when you start recording, you have two options set before you, the display and the face cam. And also, if you wanted, you could go straight to scene transitions, and right now we have fade selected, but if we wanted to simply get a straight cut from one to the other, boom, done. Now we have one last thing that we need to look at before we start recording. And we go over to the settings. And the general settings are pretty good. If you wanted, you can adjust the theme.
Throwing flashbang.
If we go down to output, there's a couple things that we need to understand. Recording path is basically where the video will end up once it's done being exported. I chose to have them go to the average video folder just to keep it simple. If you have someplace else in mind, just find it and select it. The recording quality is just fine at high quality. You could go with indistinguishable or lossless, but the describing word tremendously kind of gives you a general idea of what you will be working with, so having a medium file size is just fine. Video encoder is fine, it's software, but if you have like a heavy duty computer that will render pretty much anything you throw at it, then I would use hardware, but that's not necessary. The recording format is set to MKV. It should be MP4 if you wanted to edit something in Adobe Premiere Pro or something like that, but make it stay at MKV. I swear this is important. We'll come back to it in just a second, but don't set it to MP4. Next thing is audio, where only two things really need to be changed. The desktop audio should be set to default and not disabled, and your mic should be set to the microphone that you use pretty much all the time. And video has a couple of things going on. Typically 1920 by 1080 is a good standard. It doesn't usually give you too much grief, so I would just stick with that unless you actually have like an ancient relic of a computer that you're working with, in which case 1280 by 720 is fine. Set that to your output settings, you'll be good. 30 frames per second is a pretty good standard for your display capture, unless you want to capture that 60 FPS for your video games or for live streaming and you know that your computer can handle the extra weight added onto it. But I work between 25 and 30 FPS and my video quality has been pretty consistent, and that's just the standard that most people work with anyway, so it really is up to personal preference. Now that we have our FPS and resolution settings all figured out, we can go to the output settings again and set our bitrate. Bitrate is basically the amount of data that comes with every second of your video. Typically, the higher the bitrate, the higher the quality of the video, but the more baggage that comes alongside it. There's a page on YouTube Help that explains YouTube's recommended upload encoding settings. And it recommends that for videos that are 1080p with 30 FPS, you should do 8000 kbps. If you're doing 1080p with 60 FPS, then you should do at least 12,000. Remember, high bitrate isn't always a good thing because it can add a bigger file size onto the video and even has the potential to lower its quality. Before you actually leave the settings, there's one last thing that I want to teach you to give you an extra layer of security. So you know how we set everything to MKV and not MP4? That was intentional. Go to the advanced settings and then scroll all the way down to automatically remux to MP4. This will essentially change the MKV video to an MP4 video, and then you'll get both the MKV and the MP4. It's a little bit more to handle, but it'll be worth it because in case your MP4 file gets corrupted or something bad happens to it or whatever the heck, you can go back to OBS, hit the file button in the upper left-hand corner, go to Remux Recordings, and select the MKV file that you want. This will automatically remux it to another MP4 video, so you can basically have any number of the same MP4 videos that you want, giving you more freedom and protection from possible mistakes. And that is basically it. That's basically everything you need to know to get started with recording in OBS. If you wanted to learn more about the streaming settings, I can make another video covering that if you want it. But for the time being, recording is basically all you need to know. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.